My wife cheated with my best friend, then filed for divorce claiming I stole $200, $0 from our joint account, only to find out she's secretly been laundering money through our house for years. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling everyone on some relationship advice subreddit how I found out my wife was screwing my best friend, and then turned around and accused me of stealing $200, $0 from our joint account. Honestly, I still can't believe it's real. It's like some twisted soap opera, but this was my life. My wife, she's been a pain in the ass from the start. Bitchy, manipulative, always acting like she's better than everyone else. But I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We'd been married for about 8 years, got married right out of college, thinking we were building a life together. I worked my ass off as a project manager in construction, making decent money, and she stayed home for the most part, handling the house and the kids. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and I thought everything was stable. At first, there were little signs. She'd get weird about her phone, hide it when I came near, or suddenly be too busy to talk in the evenings. I brushed it off, told myself she was just stressed, maybe had a fling or two in her past, but nothing serious. Still, I noticed her spending habits changed. She'd be shopping online late at night, buying things I didn't recognize, and I'd find receipts for expensive jewelry or designer clothes she claimed she needed for herself. I never suspected anything about her cheating, honestly. I just thought she was bored or maybe secretly unhappy. Then about 3 months ago, I started noticing strange things. Her phone kept disappearing. She'd delete texts like crazy. I'd catch her in little lies. She'd say she was at the grocery store, but her location on her phone said she was somewhere else. I even saw her texting someone late at night, her face lit up with that guilty look, like she was hiding something. I got suspicious but kept quiet, thinking I was overreacting. The biggest red flag hit me when I started noticing money missing from our joint account. Not huge chunks, but enough to make me wonder. I'd see charges from places she'd never mentioned, or withdrawals I didn't recognize. When I asked her about it, she shrugged and said, "It's just some online shopping, I swear. You know I like to treat myself." Yeah, right. I knew she was lying, but I didn't have proof yet. Then came the night I found the real bombshell. I was working late one evening and decided to check her phone when she left it unattended. I needed to see what she was hiding. That's when I saw the messages, flirty, suggestive texts between her and my best friend Jake. They weren't just friends exchanging casual chat. They were full-on sexting. I saw pictures, dirty talk, plans to meet up. My stomach dropped. My best friend, my wife, all in bed together. It was like getting punched in the gut. I felt numb, frozen. I couldn't believe it. I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Were they cheating before I even suspected? I felt betrayed on every level by Jake, by myself for not seeing it sooner. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it that night. I needed to think, to process what I just discovered. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a fling. This was something much darker. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I sat her down, told her I knew everything. Her reaction was cruel. She looked me dead in the eyes, smirked, and lied right to my face. She said I was crazy, that I was paranoid, and that I was projecting. She claimed I was suspicious because I didn't trust her, that Jake was just a friend, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, but I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. The thing that hit me hardest was how she dismissed it all so casually, like she was proud of her little secret. And her excuses, she said she was stressed. She needed someone to talk to, that Jake had been there for her emotionally. Yeah, emotional cheating. That's what she called it. She acted like she was the victim, like I was the one overreacting. But I knew better. I saw the texts. I saw the photos. The truth was staring me in the face. And that's where I am now, trying to figure out what to do next. I'm angry, hurt, and completely betrayed. I don't know how I got here, how I let things get this far. But I do know one thing: I'm not going to let her get away with it, not without some kind of payback. I don't know what form that will take yet, but she's not walking all over me anymore. I've got the evidence and I'm planning my move. The question is, what's next? After I confronted that morning, she just sat there smirking, acting like I was overreacting. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was paranoid, that I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat on me. I couldn't believe her. I'd seen the messages myself, clear as day. There was no denying it, yet she had the nerve to act like I was the problem. I didn't say much at first. I was too stunned. Instead, I just stared at her, trying to process everything. How could she lie so easily? How could she be so manipulative? I'd always thought she was a little high maintenance, but this was something else entirely. I remember feeling this intense mixture of anger and sadness, like I'd been punched in the stomach, but also like I'd been betrayed by someone I loved. I told her I needed some time to think. I grabbed my phone and left the house, not wanting to blow up right there. I went for a walk, trying to clear my head. As I paced the street, all I could think about was how she'd lied to me for months, maybe even years. The money issues, the late-night texts, the secret meetings. I'd missed every sign. I kept replaying her words in my head, her dismissive attitude, her smug smile. She was so good at hiding what she was really doing. While I was out, I decided I had to look into her phone more. I needed to understand exactly how deep this went. I knew I couldn't just walk away without knowing everything. So I snuck back in when she was out running errands, got her password from a slip-up she made earlier, and unlocked her messages. What I found made my stomach turn even more. Not only was she cheating with Jake, but she had been laundering money through our house for years. Yes, laundering money. I couldn't believe it myself. She had this whole secret operation going on behind my back. She'd stash cash in hidden compartments, funnel it through fake accounts, and even used our house as part of her scheme. She'd set up accounts in the name of a consulting business she claimed she owned, but it was just a front. I saw bank transfers, receipts, and even some encrypted messages with shady characters. It was like she was running a small crime syndicate right under my nose. The worst part: she'd been doing it all while pretending to be the perfect housewife. She'd tell me she was just tired or busy with the kids, but behind the scenes she was making millions. I never suspected a thing. I felt so stupid for trusting her, for thinking everything was normal. I looked around our house, our home, and realized it was the money she was laundering, the lies she told. They all made this place feel like a trap. Like I was living in a house that wasn't even mine anymore. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about how I'd been played, how she'd betrayed me so thoroughly. I wondered if the kids had any idea what was going on. I felt sick. All I wanted was to pack my bags and leave, but I knew I had to stay and figure out my next move. I had to be smart about this. If she was laundering money, she'd have eyes everywhere. I had to be careful. The next day, I started thinking about how to gather evidence, how to protect myself legally, and how to expose her without tipping her off. I also knew I had to confront Jake, my so-called best friend, who was neck-deep in this mess. I'd always trusted him, always considered him my brother. And now I saw him for what he really was: a liar, a cheat, and a thief. I was furious. I decided I'd go to a lawyer first. I needed advice on how to handle the situation. I also wanted to see if I could get a warrant or some kind of official investigation into her money laundering. I knew I couldn't just storm in and accuse her without proof. I had to be methodical, but I also knew I couldn't keep this secret anymore. If I was going to take her down, I had to do it right. Meanwhile, kept acting like everything was fine. She'd come home, act like she was the victim, and accuse me of attacking her character. She even had the nerve to say I was jealous of Jake, that I was insecure. That made me furious. The woman I married had turned into a criminal, a liar, and a master manipulator. And she had the audacity to gaslight me, to pretend she was innocent. I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My trust was shattered, my world was crumbling. I knew I had to make a choice, whether to fight for my marriage or to cut my losses and walk away. But one thing was clear: I was done being played. I was going to expose everything, no matter what it took. This wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. It was about justice, about saving what was left of my life before she completely destroyed it all. The more I dug into her phone and the bank statements, the more I realized just how deep deception went. It wasn't just a matter of her screwing around with Jake. She was laundering money right under my nose, using our house as a hub for her illegal activities. It was like finding out the house I thought was our sanctuary was actually the front for a criminal enterprise. I felt sick every time I stared at the evidence. I got in touch with a lawyer the next morning. I needed to know what my rights were, how much of this I could prove, and what steps I could take to protect myself legally. The lawyer, a guy named Mark, was pretty straightforward. He told me that what I was describing could land in serious legal trouble, especially if she was laundering money through our property. He warned me to be cautious. Any wrong move could tip her off and make her harder to catch. Mark advised me to start documenting everything: screenshots, bank records, her messages, and to keep a detailed timeline of everything I discovered. I also decided I needed to get a hold of Jake. I couldn't just sit back and let him pretend like he was innocent. I knew if I confronted him, I'd need to be careful because I didn't want her to find out I was onto her. I also did want to tip her off that I was planning something, so I set up a meeting with Jake at a local coffee shop. I figured I'd try to get some answers, see where his head was at. When I met him, he looked nervous, like he knew I was coming. I played it cool, asked him how he was doing, and then I just straight up asked, "Jake, I know you've been sleeping with. I saw the messages, man. What the hell is going on?" He froze for a second, then tried to play it off, saying it was just emotional stuff, that they were just friends. Yeah, right. I told him I knew the truth, that I'd seen everything, and that I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I warned him that if he didn't come clean, I'd make sure everyone knew what he was really involved in. He looked panicked, but I could tell he was also trying to hide something bigger. That's when I decided I had to go even further. I couldn't just confront them and hope for the best. I had to gather concrete proof, something that would hold up if I took legal action or even went to the authorities. I started secretly recording her conversations when she didn't know. I installed a hidden camera in the house, aimed at her usual hiding spots, and kept a close eye on her finances. I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way out of this. Over the next few days, I noticed her behavior getting more frantic. She was extra secretive, deleting messages, changing passwords, and acting more bitchy than usual. She'd throw fits if I asked about the money or her phone. I could see she was starting to panic, which only confirmed I was on the right track. The moment I saw her trying to hide a large cash deposit into a fake account, I knew I had enough evidence to blow this whole thing wide open. But I also knew I had to be careful. If I tipped her off too early, she might destroy everything, hide the money, or even worse, try to turn things around on me. I had to wait for the perfect moment. Meanwhile, I kept my cool, pretending everything was normal. I didn't want her to suspect I was onto her. I played the part of the clueless husband, all while gathering proof to take her down once and for all. One night, I came home early from work and caught her red-handed, going through the safe in our closet. I had secretly installed a small listening device in there, and I heard her talking to someone on the phone, probably one of her laundering contacts. She was giving instructions about moving more cash, dividing it into smaller amounts, and hiding it in different accounts. That was the final straw. I knew I had enough to expose her. I sat there in the dark watching her, feeling this mixture of rage and helplessness. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. She'd lied to me, cheated on me, and was running a criminal enterprise behind my back. I thought I knew her, but I was wrong. I started planning my next move, how to confront her, how to make her pay, and how to protect myself and our kids from the fallout. I realized I was in a war, and I had to be smart about it. I also knew I couldn't keep this secret forever. I had to decide whether to turn her in or try to get her to confess first. Whatever I did, I knew this was going to change everything. The house, our marriage, my trust, everything was shattered, and I wasn't sure if I could ever put it back together. But one thing was certain. Lies had finally caught up with her, and I was about to make her regret every single one. The night I saw her going through the safe was the night everything changed for good. I've been waiting for the right moment, and when I caught her in the act, I knew I couldn't hold back anymore. I stayed in the shadows, listening to her murmur into the phone, giving instructions to someone I didn't even want to imagine. The amount of money she was laundering was staggering, and the fact that she was using our house as part of her scheme made me sick. I had already collected enough evidence over the past few days: screenshots, bank transfers, encrypted messages, and recordings. But seeing her actually at the safe, actively hiding money, made everything real. I knew I had to act fast before she destroyed all traces or tried to run. My mind raced. I couldn't just call the police blindly. She'd cover her tracks, hide the money, and probably try to pin everything on me. No, I had to be smarter. The next morning I woke up early, pretending everything was normal. I decided I'd call a private investigator. I needed someone who knew how to handle this kind of covert operation. I gave him all the evidence I had, told him to keep an eye on her movements and find out who she was dealing with. I also arranged for a lawyer to be ready for whatever came next. I was determined to get to the bottom of this, no matter how long it took. Meanwhile, kept acting like nothing was wrong. She'd throw tantrums if I questioned her about her whereabouts or her phone. She accused me of being paranoid, of spying on her, and called me crazy for suspecting her. But I could see the cracks in her facade. She was starting to crack under the pressure, and I knew I had to strike while the iron was hot. One afternoon, I caught her in a lie. She told me she was going to visit her sister, but her GPS location showed she was at a completely different place, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. I couldn't believe my eyes. She was meeting with someone, probably one of her laundering contacts. That was it. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I had to do it carefully. I didn't want her to disappear or destroy the evidence. I decided to record her next conversation. I set up a small hidden camera in the living room and left a voice recorder in her purse. I knew I was risking everything, but I couldn't let her slip away. That night she came home late, looking tense and jittery. I watched her from the shadows as she took out her phone and started talking in hushed tones. I listened, heart pounding, as she discussed new deposit plans, new hiding spots, and even mentioned a backup plan if she got caught. I felt a mixture of rage and despair. How had I been so blind? How had she built this secret empire behind my back? I thought about all the years we'd been together, all the memories, and realized she'd been lying to me the entire time. I thought about the kids, wondering if they had any idea what was going on. I wondered if I could ever trust her again. That night I finally made the decision. I couldn't let her keep going. I had enough evidence to expose her, and I knew I had to act fast before she destroyed everything. I contacted the private investigator again, told him to follow her every move, and told my lawyer to prepare a case. I also decided I'd confront her directly. I wanted her to know I wasn't playing around anymore. The next morning I sat her down and told her I knew everything. I told her I had evidence of her laundering money through our house, and I was going to turn her in if she didn't come clean. Her reaction was priceless. She looked stunned for a moment, then she started crying, trying to deny everything. She said I was crazy, that I was making this all up, and that I was just jealous of her success. I looked at her, cold and furious. I told her she'd been caught, that I wasn't going to let her ruin our lives anymore. I explained I'd be calling the authorities, and I'd be divorcing her. She tried to manipulate me, saying I was overreacting, that she loved me, that she'd stop. But I knew better. I'd seen too much. I knew she'd been lying for years, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. That moment, I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and heartbreak because I realized I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. The woman I loved was nothing but a criminal, a liar, and a cheat. I knew this was just the beginning of a long fight to clear my name, protect my kids, and rebuild my life. But one thing was certain. This empire was about to come crashing down, and I was the one holding the wrecking ball. After I laid everything out, evidence, my decision to involve authorities, everything, I could see her crumble. His face twisted with anger, then desperation. She started pleading, throwing out every excuse she could think of, how she'd been stressed, how she was just trying to make a better life for herself, how I was crazy for suspecting her. She even tried to cry, acting like a victim, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen too much, and I knew the truth was staring right at me. I told her I'd already contacted the police and the lawyer, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. Her eyes widened, and for the first time I saw a flicker of genuine fear. She knew she was done. I saw her trying to spin a story, saying she'd been forced into laundering money, that someone else was behind it all, but I cut her off. I told her she'd been caught red-handed and there was no way out now. The tension in the house was unbearable. She kept trying to gaslight me, saying I was overreacting, that I was jealous of her success, that I was crazy for suspecting her in the first place. But I didn't care anymore. I was done listening to her lies. I'd gathered enough evidence to bury her, and I was ready to do just that. I called the police right there, told them everything I knew, and they said they'd send someone over to take her in for questioning. While waiting, I started packing up some of the important documents, bank statements, her hidden stash of cash, the encrypted files I'd found. I wasn't planning on sticking around. I knew this world was about to shatter, and I wanted to be gone before she had a chance to spin any more lies or destroy evidence. I also contacted a divorce lawyer to start the process. I knew this was going to be a long, messy battle, but I was ready for it. When the police arrived, they took her into custody. She was yelling, crying, and trying to deny everything, but it was too late. Her empire of lies was collapsing around her. I watched her get into the cruiser, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd finally uncovered the truth, but at what cost? The woman I thought I knew was gone. Instead, I was left with a house full of secrets, a mountain of betrayal, and a future I wasn't sure I was ready to face. In the days that followed, I stayed with a friend, trying to process everything. The legal process moved quickly, was charged with money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy. The media caught wind of her arrest because of the amount involved, and her reputation was ruined. Meanwhile, I had to focus on protecting my kids. I sat them down and explained that Mommy had made some bad choices, but they didn't need to worry, they'd be okay. It broke my heart to see the confusion and sadness in their eyes. As for me, I realized I'd been living in a fantasy for years. I'd trusted blindly, believing in the perfect life we'd built. But it was all a lie. The house I thought was our sanctuary was actually a crime scene. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I also knew I had to move on. I couldn't let her actions define me. I decided to file for divorce, start fresh, and rebuild my life from scratch. Looking back, I learned a lot from all this. Trust is fragile and it can be shattered in an instant. Never ignore the small signs: hidden money, secretive behavior, lies. The truth always has a way of coming out, and when it does, it hits hard. I also learned that revenge isn't about petty payback. It's about protecting yourself, exposing lies, and making sure justice is served. I'm still healing, still trying to put the pieces back together, but I know one thing for sure: I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. And I hope anyone reading this learns to trust their instincts before it's too late. In the aftermath of everything, I've had a lot of time to reflect on what happened and how I got here. Honestly, I'm still trying to piece it all together, but one thing is clear. I was by a woman I thought I knew, and I let myself be too trusting for too long. That mistake nearly cost me everything: my marriage, my peace of mind, and maybe even my future. Since arrest, life has been a whirlwind. The house is quiet now, almost too quiet. I moved out, got a new place, and started rebuilding from scratch. The kids are doing okay, they're resilient, thankfully, though I know they're confused and hurting. I try to be honest with them without giving away too much. I want them to understand that adults sometimes make bad choices, but that doesn't mean they're bad people. I tell myself I'm doing the right thing even if it hurts. Financially, I've had to be smart. I've changed all my passwords, set up new bank accounts, and taken steps to protect myself from any lingering schemes or attempts to manipulate me. I've also been working with a financial advisor to clean up the mess left behind, settling accounts, freezing her access, and making sure I don't get again. It's a lot to handle, but I'm doing my best. Emotionally, I'm still a mess. I feel betrayed, angry, and sometimes hopeless. But I also feel a strange sense of relief. The truth is out now, and I don't have to wonder anymore. I don't have to live in fear that she's hiding something or that she's going to hurt me or the kids again. The weight of her lies is finally gone, replaced by a cautious hope that I can move forward. I've learned some hard lessons from this ordeal. Trust is fragile and it should never be taken for granted. Always pay attention to the small signs. secretive behavior, unexplained money, and evasiveness. They're telling you something. And most importantly, never ignore your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. I wish I'd listened to mine sooner. Now, I focus on rebuilding my life, taking things day by day, making sure my kids know they're loved and trying to find some happiness again. I've started therapy to work through the anger and betrayal, and it's helping. I've also cut ties with Jake completely. I don't need a friend who'd betray me like that. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and I refuse to let him back into my life. Looking back, I realize I was naive, but I also see that I was lucky. I uncovered the truth before things got even worse. His downfall was inevitable once I found the evidence, but I'm glad I didn't stick around to be part of her lie anymore. I'm grateful for the lessons learned, about trust, about resilience, and about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, my advice is simple: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small they seem. Protect yourself and your loved ones, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's better than living a lie. And in the end, the only way to truly move forward is to face the pain, learn from it, and keep pushing forward. Because life, too short to be trapped in someone else's deception.